One of the great thrills of a trip abroad is the first contact with a foreign shore. And here is the Queen Elizabeth with her passengers leaving ship for the boat train to London. London on the River Thames is a vast world capital of Commonwealth and Empire. St. Paul's Cathedral miraculously still stands, and so do all of London's bridges. The tower, most impressive of the ancient buildings, is guarded by the yeoman warders. Along the Thames are the extensive Houses of Parliament. In the financial district is the Royal Exchange. Cars drive on the left side of the street, and at busy crossings like Trafalgar Square and Piccadilly Circus, it's well to remember this. Yes, London appears much the same, even down to the buskers who sing and dance to amuse the passing public. London is fortunate in the number and beauty of its parks. St. James and Green Parks extend from the business district to Buckingham Palace. Hyde Park, with its placid serpentine, is even larger and is grazed by sheep brought down from Scotland. And then there are countless little parks, like the one behind Parliament at the edge of the Thames. Everyone loves the trappings of pomp and splendor. Here are the Royal Horse Guards leaving Whitehall after the famous changing of the guard. England's moist climate is kind to flowers. Gardens are the delight and envy of visitors. Nearby in Kent is this dahlia and chrysanthemum nursery. Canterbury, the ecclesiastical capital of England, with its fine cathedral, is also in this beautiful south coast country. A few miles up the Thames from London is Runnymede, where King John signed the Magna Carta. Close at hand is Windsor Castle, which has been occupied by England's kings since the 11th century. Across the river stands Eton College, with its playing fields which have shaped the character of British leaders for many generations. One of England's great universities is Oxford. The tower of Magdalen College and the steeple of St. Mary's are but two of the many beautiful spires against the Oxford sky. Mecca to all lovers of great English verse is Stratford on Avon. The modern Shakespeare Memorial Theater was built with funds raised in England and America. On a side street near the home of John Harvard is the house where Shakespeare was born. And this is the cottage of his wife, Anne Hathaway. In the same Midlands district lie the Cotswolds, one of the most beautiful parts of rural England. The small villages with houses built of honey-colored stone seem to come right out of Never Never Land. Yet everyday people live and work in them. This is busy Princes Street in Edinburgh. While the Scots are proud of their record as fighting men, their finest monument in the park at the right is a memorial not to a warrior, but to a man of letters, Sir Walter Scott. The city is best seen from Edinburgh Castle. The outstanding summer attraction is the Music Festival, to which added color is given by the skirling pipers of the Royal Scots Regiment. In the Trossachs to the north, the hills are purple with heather. It is here and in the Highlands that you sense the legend and romance of Scotland. In this region, high roads and low roads meet on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond.
All over the countryside you will find the remains of the great castles of the Middle Ages. Some are tucked away deep in the country, others still overlook and dwarf our modern towns and cities. Once, these castles commanded important positions on river crossings. Some of these stone castles were built where there were natural fortifications, close to the sea, or on a rocky ledge. Most of the castles of the 11th and 12th centuries had a strong tower or a keep as a final refuge against attack. But the entrance to the castle was still a weak point. To strengthen it, the medieval lord usually built one or two towers to form a gatehouse. The gate was defended with a portcullis. The winding gear of the portcullis lay in a small room above the gate. When the enemy was approaching, the order was given to close the gate, and the portcullis was lowered into position. At the top of the gatehouse, slots or holes were cut in the base of the parapet. Through these holes, the defenders dropped down stones or poured out boiling pitch and lead on the heads of the enemy beneath. At the end of the 13th century, the castle builders began to design new sorts of castles which had double lines of defense. Some builders completely surrounded the walls of the castle with a moat. Others built castles with two sets of walls, one lying within the other. These were called concentric castles. You can see here how the outer wall completely surrounded the inner one. Both walls had flanking towers, and the inner wall was higher than the outer, so that a constant fire could be kept up from both walls at once. These castles were so well designed and defended that it became almost impossible to storm and take them. They are the last of the castles of the Middle Ages, for by this time the country had become more peaceful, and the need for castles began to die out. Only by studying the remains of these great homes of the Middle Ages can we create for ourselves a picture of the life that went on there centuries ago.
Wordsworth, whose home was 30 miles away, lodged in this house with the widow Tyson. In his works you may read of his life there, which was simple and happy enough. That was about 1780, and Hawkshead looks much the same today, quiet and rather sleepy, a local centre for the farming folk round about, who mostly raise sheep. Not so harsh and gaunt as some parts of Lakeland, yet like every Lakeland valley, set in a frame of hills, with a lake in the valley bottom, the lovely Esthwaite water. Here the young Wordsworth loved to roam among the fields both day and night, and by the waters all the summer long. Further afield, the boy and his friends climbed and fished in grander country. From Tarn Howes they could look north, clear into the heart of Lakeland, and see the great peaks lying shoulder to shoulder, while at their feet lay one of the most beautiful of the many tarns that lie in the secret folds of the hills. West and south, the view extends along the flanks of other great hills, which overlook the long stretch of Coniston water. The places Wordsworth saw on his long walks inspired many poems. The little village of Skelliff, for example, lies at the mouth of the valley of Great Langdale, which is dominated by the twin peak called the Langdale Pikes. A tree-clad gully in the hillside hides a waterfall with the romantic name of Dungeon Gill. Wordsworth tells how two shepherd boys dared each other to cross the rock bridge above the fall, and how one of them sees from it a lamb which has been swept over the brink. Dungeon Gill is an apt name, for the water tumbles into a dark chasm which does indeed suggest a dungeon in some castle of the giants.